What? A child that is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. Story do you have? Not a village, but a woman's marriage. When I was in elementary, I was forced to be in the normal music class instead of the special ed class. I'm going to the proper terms. Mainstreamed and assisted course, I like them more, for years. Even after my mom and both of my therapists requested I get put in the assisted class for sensory reasons. I'm autistic and had sensory overloads daily in this class. The teacher said I was lying to them and always did quiet activities when someone sat in on the class. So I suffered every Monday and Wednesday. I had school from when I was 4 to when I was 10. But then I went to middle school and life moved on. I still loved music, so I tried to join choir. I was denied for 2 years, but got in when I was 12. I'm a pretty good singer and had no other extracurricular activities, so I began helping the choir director. Eventually, he asks me if his daughter, who's also autistic, could be good with music like I was. He says her music teacher in elementary school says she's terrible with music and throws tantrums in class. I say she's most likely not having tantrum, instead having a sensory overload, because 38-year-olds playing the recorder at once is hell. Other than a few other questions about his daughter, it's the last I hear of this elementary school music class. A couple years later, I'm bringing my mom lunch in my old high school. She works there as an assisted class teacher, and I see my old choir director and his daughter. We catch up and eventually they leave to get lunch together, and I chat with my mom. She says, "You know, you're one of the reasons he divorced his wife." I'm like, "What?" And she explains that his ex-wife was the elementary school music teacher, and when I said elementary school music class is sensory hell, he found out she doesn't believe autism exists and thinks you can fix neurodivergent kids by making them so uncomfortable they become normal. Not a good attitude for the mom of an autistic kid. She also refused to take a course on how to teach mainstream special needs kids, so she also lost her job. No regrets. A guy I went to high school with burned the bridge with his entire family. There was that nuclear revenge post about a guy ostracized by the entire town, I think cause he was born out of wedlock, and after getting out of there became an inspector of some kind. Eventually he was given a list of factories that needed reviewing and one needed to close. The factory in his hometown was on the list. He goes there, inspects, they act all buddy-buddy thinking they're safe from closure. Boy were THRY wrong. Every infraction, breach of safety, incorrect anything went into his report. The whole town basically was built around that factory, and when it shut down, the town was desolate and dead within a few years. A guy I went to high school with burned the bridge with his entire family. We were not best friends, more of a friend type of situation, so my info is a lot of hearsay. But I do know some things for certain. He was the middle child, with an older sister and a younger brother. His parents had owned a diner and it had been in his family for a few generations. It was an unspoken rule that the kids of each generation would help out when they were little, and eventually take it over to keep it in the family. The problem was none of them wanted anything to do with it. It was the easiest way to set him off, even mentioning it would have him go from 100 real quick. This didn't stop either of his parents though. They would joke about how the kids didn't need to worry about college or moving away, all of that would be taken care of when they would run the diner. The sister, being the oldest, was the first really pressured into it, but he and his brother told her to get out and don't look back, and don't let them guilt trip you. So she did, and goes to college on a sports scholarship and then moves a few states away. She occasionally visits, but more or less left the town in her rearview mirror. Then it was his turn, but unfortunately he didn't have the money to get away, so his parents tell him to go to community college and work at the diner to save money. This is where the issues started. The younger brother doesn't go to college and decides to go couch surfing and backpacking across the country for a few years. Occasionally coming back to work for a few weeks when he needed the money, only to take off again. So my friend gets left running the place, despite swearing he never would. I'd see him around sometimes at bars, and he was a bitter shell of his former self with a bad drinking problem and a series of failed relationships. His parents didn't seem to care that their son was a depressed alcoholic, so long as their family legacy stayed the same. He confided in me how they were pushing him to get married and give them grandkids, to settle down and let go of this silly dream of starting over when he has the diner. Which, given how shit-faced he was in nearly every interaction I had with him, it's impressive he was able to run it. His sister and brother couldn't be bothered to come down and help, and in fact they started to agree with the parents that he should just cut his losses and make this life work for him. One day, he drops off the face of the earth. Nobody sees or hears from him for 3 weeks. His parents say he went on a vacation, and they also hadn't heard from him. Then suddenly he's back in town, seemingly in much better spirits. Looking healthier than we had seen him in years. About 2 months later, the diner is torn down and replaced with some other business. As it turns out, his girlfriend at the time gave him an ultimatum. Quit the drinking and go to therapy or we're done. So he does, and the therapist points out the obvious things linking his depression, and says he should take a vacation and figure out what else he wants to do with his life. He went to Vegas, partied for 2 weeks and admittedly thought about killing himself. After getting it out of his system, he devises a plan to sell the diner and pocket the money for himself. Everything was in his name as the owner anyway, so it was pretty easy. He took the best offer he could and used that money to leave town. The brother and sister didn't get a dime, and the parents were already retired. He moved to the other side of the country with his now wife, and we follow each other on social media, but he seems much happier. Apparently he hasn't spoken a word to his family in years, nor they to him, and does not intend to start. Growing up, our neighbors had a couple boys 10-14. The younger son had a good friend that would stay at their house very frequently. He was always pretty quiet and kept to himself, except when he was with his friend, the 10 years old, which was when he could be himself. One day we find out that he was permanently moving in with my neighbors due to an unsafe situation at home. Apparently this poor kid got to watch his mother be murdered by her boyfriend, all because drugs. Right in front of him. The 10-year-old. Luckily, my neighbors stepped up and offered to take him in, which was actually great for everyone. He really started to blossom and became pretty stable, with a caveat: he just didn't take any shit from anyone. Which leads us to our terrific act of rebellion. Like everyone else in our neighborhood, we rode the bus home. This kid is riding home from elementary school when the bus driver started going off on the kids for real, or imagined indiscretions. Well, this kid takes offense to this and speaks up on behalf of the rest of the kids. Bus driver, now royally pissed, angry, for our non-us crowd, tells this kid one more word and I'm kicking you off the bus. Well, you are correct in your assumption of what transpired next. Kid gets kicked off the bus, which royally pisses him off, so QMC, kid walks off the bus, and immediately walks in front of the bus. We were about a mile from his normal stop at our street. And this was a 2-lane road with sporadic oncoming traffic. No way the driver could get away with trying to pass, so he drove at a walking pace until the kid got to our street. Parents were wondering where their children were, as everyone was now 30 minutes late, and were overall very amused when they discovered the cause. Still about the most proud of a 10-year-old I've ever been, and I have 2 of my own. Anyway, I gotta look that guy up. Hope he's well. One of my friends from elementary school is the typical middle child. His brother is 11 years older and his sister is 5 years younger. So of course he faces all the actual consequences for his other siblings' actions. Rules he didn't like were because of stuff his brother did when his brother was a kid. If his sister did something stupid, it was his fault because he should have stopped her. His wants and needs were never the priority. If he wanted money, no, because it went to his brother in college. If he wanted friends to come over, no, because sister already had people coming over. He had to wear his brother's old clothes, but of course his sister got new clothes. Yada yada, you get the picture. When he was 16 he went out on a late-night food run, and while waiting in the drive-thru someone rear-ends him pretty hard. Does a not insignificant amount of damage to his parents' car. The other driver takes full responsibility, offers to pay for the repairs. Just an unfortunate accident. Well, his parents revoke his car privileges. Because he got in an accident, and they had a no accidents policy, didn't matter, then it wasn't his fault. So he told them that if they took away his car privileges he will never lend them anything for the rest of his life. They grounded him for saying that. That was about a decade ago, and he has never once given them anything. No money, no car, not even housing. He literally made his parents get a hotel once. He said he would forgive them if they apologized. To my knowledge they have not apologized. By the way, his sister was involved in an accident a few years back where she was at fault. And her parents not only paid for the repairs to her car, but also are helping her pay for her car insurance now.